Shalom. This is Mary Omni from the World Government House of King David, Holy Covenant Constitutional Enforcer. This is a Republic Notice that asks a question. The title of this Republic Notice that asks a question is, who's getting paid under the table? Who's getting paid under the table? It's 2013. We're in the month of November. You know, cosmic war is going on, and it's heavy. I'm gonna tell you, it's heavy. It's in space. We're in the middle of Star Wars, that's for sure, and we're gonna feel it on the ground, whether you hit back or not. You're gonna feel it, one way or another. But anyway, who's getting paid under the table is timely, because we're in the time of revelation. And it's the time for truth and everything to be coming out. You know, I wouldn't say reconciliation, because only King of Kings, Lord of Lords can do what needs to be done at this point. Okay? There will not be any peace until the King of Kings, Lord of Lords establish the kingdom and the everlasting kingdom of King David. See, this has to come about. So this is not truth and reconciliation. This is truth at the time of revelation. Who's getting paid under the table? Okay. You know, this is really, it's really a difficult concept that I want you to get ready to embrace, but I'm going to try to make it short. You know, and I hate to adjust to your attention deficit, because a lot of you won't follow through, and then the end of my videos is a lot where the real significant information comes about. I kind of build up to it, but I'm going to try to make the videos a little shorter, because I realize you're ready to jump somewhere else very easily, because you're just distracted very easily. It's part of our MK Alter programming, and it's part of having this internet beast in front of us at our fingertips. We're like children in a candy store, and we can't get enough of everything. Okay, who's getting paid under the table? In 2013, it's everybody but blacks. Everybody is getting paid under the table but American constitutional blacks. Everybody is getting paid under the table but American constitutional blacks. And here's why. Everybody in America getting paid under the table is public. It's public mystery Babylon. Blacks are the republic, and they are the sealed off by the 15th Amendment, the New Jerusalem Wall. Okay? Here's how it goes. America was formed and founded by constitutional writers with the investment of black Americans. Okay? We don't like to think of black Americans as the founders. We say the founding fathers, but no, the cosmic works like this. It takes a woman and a man. It takes a woman and a man. And, because that's how electricity is. Always have a negative polarity and a positive polarity. And then that's where you bring in balance. So it takes a woman and a man. It took the black woman and the black man, and the white man and the white woman, and the Indian man and the Indian woman to establish what we call America, to set up the constitutionality, to protect the land, to set up the 1 through 15th Amendments. They came to the table of brotherhood. That's where the Jews, the black Americans, the holy Gentiles came to the table of brotherhood. Now, Dr. Martin Luther King talked about this concept in the 1960s, what had already been done 100 years earlier, where the Jews and the Gentiles sat down at the table of brotherhood to carve out the foundation of the principles of this nation and to put it in a contract of supremacy that was highly sealed by blood and Fort Knox by gold and platinum with cosmic significance. So the Jews and the Gentile, the black Jews and the holy Gentiles, which is the writers and the Reconstructionists and God Almighty Church and right-hand legal administration, sat down with the former slaves, which are the Jews, the Israelites, and the natives, the other natives that included many black natives who they had and held as slaves. They all came together at the table of brotherhood, and they sealed in Fort Knox the 1 through 15th Amendment in non-consent jurisdiction supremacy, which means God's sovereign. And they decided that 3/5, they will go with the 3/5 because 3/5 couldn't consent to anything. Therefore, God's sovereignty, if we made this 3/5 legal citizen of the Constitution, then God's sovereignty would be sealed in because non-consent supremacy would be sealed in because they couldn't consent to their citizenship. They couldn't consent to going in the Constitution. They didn't consent to come to America in chains and work 400 years. So there are non-consenters from the beginning. What had to happen was to get their non-consent constitutionalized in the supremacy contract and make it supreme in the contract equal to the supremacy clause. And that's what happened when the Jews, the Gentiles, and the native chiefs, the Indian chiefs came together. They moved towards God's sovereignty. So they came to the table of brotherhood, which included sisterhood. But they came to the table of brotherhood, and that table met with cosmic resonance and sealed in a nation in the cosmic, with the cosmic blood placenta as 3/5 equals 60. That's the cosmic blood placenta. The Dogons would tell you that, okay? And it's also the sex exestimo system of the ancients, starting with Sumeria. Okay, so this Constitution will become more scientific. If you stick with me, you will discover some things that no one else can tell you but me, because I'm commissioned to tell you. And the only way you're going to find this out is through me. Some people may guess at it, but trust me, I'm surprised by a lot of the information that I'm receiving, okay? Because most blacks are trained to throw the Constitution away. But anyway, putting that aside, that's an argument for another day. I'm talking about who getting paid under the table. So this table was established, and it was sealed in brotherhood with the Jews, the Gentiles, and all the major players in America, all the major landholders, Reconstructionists, administrators, constitutional signers, writers, the laborers, the human capital investors, which is Black American, Judaic people, and it was sealed. So that's the table, okay? Now, come 1871, King Yeshua's spirit rides in on a mule called the U.S. Corporation. And this U.S. Corporation is the mule that will protect the table that was sealed and cosmically synergized, that will be the rule and the governance of God's sovereignty. And so this mule that would move in to protect it will be a demarcation point of 1871, so that everybody who came after 1871 to try to benefit from the 1 through 15th Amendments that was sealed in 1870, which sealed in the 15th Amendment to New Jerusalem Law, built-in non-consent supreme vote. So that means you couldn't get past that wall. If you think you could get past King of Kings, Lord of Lords, wall of the 15th New Jerusalem, then go ahead and masturbate on yourself, okay? But anyway, the 1871 mule was the celebration of the wall going up. King Yeshua's spirit rode in 1871 on the mule again and made that the demarcation point. And at that point, he said, whoever don't respect this blood covenant that I have with my people, I will send them through the mule anus, and they will become abominators of desolation contractors. Because this mule, they won't even have the mule, because this mule belongs to my people. It came to with their 40 acres. But they didn't consent for it, so it's the non-consented mule, so it belonged to the non-consenters. And so this mule, anybody who tries to come and steal the wealth from my children, they will go through the mule and they will be crapped out in the behind. So they come through our mule all the time and they crapped out as abominators of desolation. But this mule don't have one amendment. So what they do with this mule is they work under the table. They work under the table. They get someone in the executive office and who comes into the holies of holies and do have access to the Constitution and to set up the mule as more than national security. Originally, it was designed for national security, and it still works that way because you're not going to get past King Yeshua. What you can do is start working under the table and embezzling and committing larceny and stealing so that you're working under the table without contract. What you can't get past is the supreme contract. You can't even really get past the mule. So all you can do is kind of work under the table and steal and set up a system of stealing and a system of fiat and a system of under the table where you dealing with a mule that don't have one amendment. And by the way, the Constitution still owns that mule. So that means that everything you got under the table throughout this mule is still owned by the Constitution. So the house you living in, the car you drive, all that was given by under the table money of you playing with dung patty cakes in the mule anus. And that means you don't own nothing but the mule anus dung. And the fiat money helps you wipe that dung and helps you cover up the dung, but you're still under the table playing in mule dung. And meanwhile, you get the green ass wipes, but you don't own anything you got whatsoever. So you're working under the table. That means you're working outside of the constitutional law that came to the table of brotherhood. You're working underneath it because you're embezzling and larceny and you're a mass of criminals. Just a mass of criminals, whether you're 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. You're a mass of criminals calling yourself public, working under the table, trying to squirt out of the behind of the mule anus and then pretending you're more than you are besides mule anus processing crap out that they call due process. See, all they do is dookie process you, but you never have any privileges and immunities like the real constitutional God sovereign because you're working under the table. That means that just like King Yeshua told this woman, I gotta feed the kids first. I gotta feed the children first. And she said something about, well, they throw the scraps to the dogs. He was like, am I supposed to give it to the dogs first? So, well, that's a whole different parable that had to be discussed another day. But I'm saying they are pretending by hijacking gun, military might, whatever you call it. They're pretending they working over the table or at the table when they're really under the table in plain sight with the coercion and the hijacking and the bullying with guns and numbers. And who has helped this was the white public mass. See, the white public mass has been their buffer. And now Alex Jones and a lot of them try to cry foul because their master's turning on them. And that's the only reason they crying foul. If their masters wasn't turning on them, everything would be hunky-dory of all their white stolen wealth under the table. This is Mary Omni from the House of King David. Shalom.